think we're good. Okay, we're good. We're live. And so this is the first recorded chat really for you and I,
Gabe,
Kane.
here we are, mate. Yeah, love it.
We got sick of all the doom and gloom out there and
Yeah,
about people missing the fact that it is an advantage to own an SME if you have the right mindset. And
yeah,
that's what we want to talk about.
yeah, that's right. And I think about, we touched on this before the podcast. I have a little saying down here that gratitude defeats all evil. And I have a story that I think really
You got to
connects with
say,
for
where's
me.
down here, mate? Because you're
Oh,
walking
down
in the
here.
beautiful
Well,
countryside. Yeah.
southwest in Colac, the great metropolis of southwest Victoria. And in our building, our office space, which I think's, it's a bit echoey in there. So outside's a bit more convenient for the conversation. But we bought the building actually off a 87-year-old fella. And through that process, I met the owner, and he negotiated on the price with this, and the agent was very surprised. And when I spoke to the owner, I said, why did you negotiate on the price? And he said, you wouldn't believe it, but on my first day of work 65 years ago, when I was 22 years old, I went out to a place called Bungadore and I met a fella called Kane Leersen, who was my great grandfather that I never met. And so in that 65 years, we talked about the journey. And to me, it was an amazing moment because here he is, a connection, a bridge across generations. And he said 65 years ago, your great grandfather was digging post holes for fences by hand. They were eating rabbits and rissoles of kangaroo with no power or running water. And that's 65 years ago in regional Victoria, right? And then we keep talking now, and people keep telling me how hard their life is. And it's like, come on, guys. Yeah, we got this. So that's where I come back to. Gratitude defeats all evil. And we talk about the superpowers of SMEs, with this technology ramp we're all experiencing. It's game on in my mind.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's such a big, bold sentiment out there at the moment that we're all fucked because of the conflict, because of the price of operating, because of the federal budget and how people feel about that. I think people are missing the opportunity that this is the time to innovate. This is the time to get smart, to pivot, to be agile, to adapt to what's happening out there in the world, and to come out strong. And you have that advantage as a small or medium business. You don't have it often as a big corporate. You just can't move so fast.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for people who are nimble and agile through this period, it's a world of abundance. And, to me, I'm seeing sort of three broader themes in SME businesses that we work with. And I've been banging on about this internally, but there's these three critical pillars in my mind. And one's technology. So how are you optimizing your tech stack to be nimble, and take advantage of this AI revolution effectively? Then it comes down from there. It's like, if you've got your tech stack right, what's brand look like? Like, what's your antenna out into the world? That I think is this big lightning rod about how do we create, engagement and connectivity to who we are and what we represent. And then that last pillar, if you nail brand, if you nail technology, I think we then can have this real opportunity to optimize for human connection. And so if you're in this, service type industry, which plenty of Australian SMEs are, I think the little things are really going to go a long way now moving forward as this, traditional white collar knowledge, it breaks down, but you still need that expertise in the loop. You still need human connection in the loop. I think now moving forward, we'll become a lot more aware of what, basically, how do we feel when we do something?
Yeah. Mate, tell me, I want to come back to the tech stack, the brand, and the human connection because I know how passionate you are about that. But this conversation stems from the random chats in the morning when we're driving to work and either of us need a shot in the arm. And we
So,
rant and rave about it, negativity and all that sort of
yeah,
stuff, and we cheer each other
yeah,
up, which is great. But something that keeps coming up there is how important it is to maintain optimism,
yeah,
gratitude throughout this journey, and
yeah.
have a mindset to build something that's resilient. Why does that matter to you?
Well, it comes back to how do you move forward if you don't have faith in the future, right? And I know we're going through a challenging time, but to me, there's always an element of luck. And you go back to the 1850s and the gold rush, and for my family, that's how they end up in Australia. There's plenty of blokes who bought picks and shovels that didn't find gold, right? But they got on with it and they lived this beautiful life. And I think for us now, and you look across Australia, broadly speaking, at a macro level, we've already won the lottery to be here. And that's why I come back to this idea of gratitude defeats all evil. So if you roll into work each day, in my mind, with a mindset that says, hey, I'm getting another swing at this, how cool. I think that becomes infectious to the people you work with. It's infectious with the clients you work with. And then ultimately come back to our favourite Uncle Billy Withers. Like the traditional corporate power hierarchy in today's day and age, they're the ones that'll be freaking out because the traditional barriers to entry have been obliterated. Yeah, I know we've had these conversations, but you can get a Claude Code subscription for $99 a month, and you effectively got a team of dozens of human beings, theoretically, incredibly smart. And so if you just come with that curiosity instead of the judgment, which is one of Billy's favorite angles, it's like, how do we stay curious about this opportunity, and keep experimenting? And I think that will just come out in different ways, and ultimately Claude itself will probably solve most of the technology issues you're dealing with. And then for me now, the barriers to entry, I'm seeing it, people that are really, really clever, but that didn't have access to, huge buckets of money to employ big dev teams to bring that idea to life, can now do it in a weekend, and like
Absolutely.
that to me is a miracle.
Yeah, what an extraordinary opportunity to be
Yeah.
able to test your ideas so fast without spending any money to know, okay, it's a shit idea or it's a good idea. And if it's a good
Yeah.
idea and you got MVP, let's iterate,
Yep.
let's iterate, let's
Yeah.
iterate.
Yeah.
That feedback loops pretty fast.
Well, you put
I
your
know,
your entrepreneur hat on, Gabe, and you think, in what world would that ever have been possible? I've spent my life trying to bring ideas into being. And say you even just want to buy a building and I want to establish a collaborative workspace. There was 50 grand in just design work, schematics, feedback loops, whereas now I could just take a floor plan, run a few iterations. But then this is where I don't think, ultimately, if you're fearful, and I was a graphic designer, I'm fearful of that, I don't think you're going to get to the right space. You've got to lean into that, leverage your acumen, and then deliver it in a way that connects to that human level.
yeah, 100%. I think if you can maintain the optimistic, thankful approach to the technology, and you're a graphic designer, rather than be fearful that you are going to get replaced. If you adopt it, you can become like a
Yep.
team of designers.
Yep.
You can
Yep.
extend your ability. You can boost
Crazy.
up your capacity to take
Yeah.
on and deliver fantastic work to paying customers.
Yep.
And you can
That's right.
still, maintain really healthy margins doing that. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because
Because
jobs are getting disrupted around the place doesn't mean that your opportunity to generate revenue and financial stability for your family is going away. In fact, I think it is
yeah.
greater than ever.
Yeah. And we all know the war stories around disruption, right? And if anything, it's just the speed of disruption now that you need to become, just content with. The reality is you don't want to place too much credence on your own perspective and this idea that, I'm this super clever person. To me, it's more about now this real, nearly just letting go and, trying to create the traditional moat around your business IP, all those things are gone. But I think then moving forward, and you come back to that brand and, human connection component, I think we can really compete, utilize that SME advantage there because, now everybody's dealing with, these larger structures of human bureaucracy, political, politically compromised environments where people go into this, more of a self-preservation mode, which will restrict, the decision right. And we come back to talk about SME advantage. Think of the vision custodianship, right? And in our business, we'll learn something on Friday, roll it out on Monday, and
Yeah.
our staff engagement's never been higher. We haven't left anybody behind. There hasn't been anybody that's left our business in over 5 years now. And we have people in their 60s that would qualify as grandmothers, vibe coding on Co-work Frontier, telling us how their life's been revolutionized, and so we've been conditioned to think, oh yeah, basically dragging pixels around the screen has created value. Well, now we're just realizing that it wasn't very valuable.
Yeah. Speed to execution is something that I know you're very keen on and definitely forms part of your picture of the SME advantage. And then before you were talking about those three pillars, the tech stack, the brand, and the human connection. Tell me a little bit about how that approach is enabling your speed to execution.
Yeah, well, for us, we've been really all in on the Microsoft stack for a long time. And not really by it was more of a gut feel. Yeah, and you look at the scale of the technology, the resources, the critical infrastructure that they really are to the whole SME economy. And so I felt from a security perspective and like an intuition level that they're going to be a long term outperformer. So we locked in early. We built a CRM and Power Platform, which is really a decentralized version of Dynamics 365. And then you start to overlay that now with Cowork Frontier, which is effectively Claude plugged into that Microsoft environment. And what we've learned is really each SharePoint folder is realistically just a mini data lake. And so as a business, our data has now, that was really quite latent and we didn't have this ability to leverage it. And now, with this access to technology, that's really all the walls have broken down. And it's just gone to another level, that data efficiency, which has then not created less work. If anything, it's made us realize, well, what's the type of work we want to prioritize? And now we're doubling down in that space. So that for us is that technology solution. That's how it's worked in our mind. And I think this is what has been an SME disadvantage is this challenge of multiple tech stacks and different logins and software subscriptions, and then trying to make them talk efficiently. I don't know how you guys have gone with that. It's even been a challenge. You think about like Adapt's had this beautiful ability to work on a business, but then now you've got your Microsoft integration and different bits and pieces. So if we've got data flowing efficiently, it makes everyone's life a lot more, valuable.
Yeah. And what's the like give me an example of how your adoption of this tech stack is helping your speed to execution.
Yeah, so like you think about a traditional annual review for a client, quite clunky. You've got all these disjointed data points, portfolio reports. Um, you've got to log into different people's platforms and download things. And then we would traditionally, I think 95%, financial advice practices would then print all this out or, PDF it all into one document, present it to the client. Where now we can simply synthesize all of that data with underpinned by our brand guide. We did all that work with Scott Oxford at New Word Order, and the consistency of the output and the formatting and the graphic work. So that all then translates to breaking the data down in a way that's visually, representative of who we are as a business. But we're doing that in 5 minutes versus if we had a PowerPoint template and said, oh, hey, we want to get all this information in here and we'll have a human do it. I really think that was probably a 4-hour process. And then it's not viable, right? Because all we're really doing is trying to make the underlying data prettier. Whereas in this situation, it's enhancing the data by presenting it in a way that humans can actually understand. And typically, finance is pretty boring broadly. People really want to understand, do we have enough money to live? And is there going to be something left over at the end? It's not much more complex than that a lot of the times. And so the journey to get there, if for our family units that we can work with can really connect with that, and that's no different than if we're in an SME environment. You think about the businesses, how they're portraying data to their clients. And I'm seeing it now with, sales reports or different presentations. The formatting, is amazing versus the traditional sort of Microsoft Word document. Here's a quote that's manually typed out.
And let's talk about brand because you're passionate about your brand at Regional Prosperity and you think it's a big
Yeah,
advantage.
yeah.
The decision you guys made there to do that work with New World Order, how's that playing out for you now?
Yeah, I think it's like in some ways it's the best money we ever spent. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to ask you the same. You've gone through this little pivot lately from Adapt to this Lumia branding. So there's a whole story in that, I'm sure. But yeah, from our mind, it's like I think brand was very difficult for SMEs in the past, basically due to resourcing. You think about capital required to work with an agency, get a brand guide that's sustainable and scalable and stays valid. All the cash flow commitments to that were complex. And you think then compare that to the larger corporates, where I'm seeing some stuff now where the reality is, with a really creative person, they can build an incredible brand guide in 4 to 6 hours. And so the average watermark, I think, is going to significantly improve across the board. And then it comes back to, well, what is it that you want to stand for and connect with your clients? And yeah, I think that'd be interesting to hear, your pivot into Lumia from that.
Yeah, sure, mate. I want to ask you a question, then I'm happy to talk about that. But it's, you ask a brand guy, why is brand important? And they'll keep you busy for hours. No worries at all. You're a finance guy, right? So this is a good question. You're a finance
Yeah,
guy, not a brand guy, but
yeah,
you think brand is important. Why?
yeah,
Why is it so important for SMEs to be able
yeah.
to harness their advantage to lean into this idea?
Yeah, and that's where everyone's got their own, I guess, leadership style. But for me, what's interesting is if we were to lift our eyes as a business and take a really aspirational lens, and everybody that lives and works in our businesses lives in regional Australia, and so I think through that sequence, we need a prosperous regional Australia. Ultimately, our business is built on that, and so if we don't come in service of that idea, my concern is eventually, it becomes unsustainable for everybody. So I think now, whether it was through, Lumia or regional prosperity or any different sort of brand, if for me, that longer term vision, there's some real scalability to that, and not necessarily in the turnover of your business, but I think like more emotionally, it's scalable in that sense that you can connect with that idea over a sustained period of time. And you talk about resilience in your own business. I think that's what matters. And I think you know how hard it is to build an SME at times. If you didn't believe in succession thinking for SME businesses, you probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. And that's a very aspirational, more of a philosophy, is how I would see it.
Oh, you couldn't have said it better. Doing the work we do and trying to break into the market and trying to educate the way we do is extremely difficult. And if the only reason why I'm here doing this and why Bill's still at it and why our team are all pulling together so hard to do the work we do is that we just our give a shit for people who choose to start,
Yeah,
own, run their own businesses just so
yeah,
high. We can't be any
yeah,
different. We're just all
yeah.
wired that way.
That's right.
We won't be happy doing anything else. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean, you asked about that Lumia as a pivot point, and you rightly say trying to talk about what it is that you do so that your ideal market understands is a difficult concept, and it is inherently difficult for our business for Adapt. It's always been very complicated to explain what we do and why it matters. Now, if you go and talk to the people that we've worked with and the outcomes that they've got, it couldn't be clearer. They'll keep you busy for a long time explaining how their lives have changed and how their businesses have changed. But we find it difficult to articulate it to the market. Through a lot of surveying and interviewing our customers, the one thing that became extremely clear is what they find tremendously valuable is the coaching aspect of our work. The fact that a human being who's done it before for their own business and then who's coached many other business owners through this journey
yeah,
and who
yeah,
want to do this work can
yeah,
stand shoulder to shoulder with them, hold them accountable, challenge their own behavior, and show them a pathway to get what they ultimately want. That is what our customers value the most. And you can't get long term outcomes from that without doing the work in a technology platform. You can't
yeah,
because the
yeah,
data is
yeah,
just not sustained, right? And so
Yeah.
this combination of our coaching and our platform, those two together is what gets the results for the customers.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
really a product that we offer. And we've been searching for a way to name the product, to give it
Yeah.
an identity, a brand
Yeah.
identity. And through a lot
Yeah.
of work, adapt Lumia being the key product name is what came through. And it had to be something that we could own. It had to be something that would stand out and resonate, and it had to be something that could be explained. And a very big part of the work we do is to shine a light on what is going on and what are the blockers to getting what you want. Shine a light on the behavior that is standing in your way, and then giving people a way to get through that. Giving owners the chance to zoom out, step back, have a look over
Yeah.
there at the
Yeah.
horizon to try to pick a direction. That connection to light and revelation and understanding was quite strong for us, and that's how
Yeah.
we ended
Yeah.
up there.
Well, and that's yeah, I think why there's always been a natural values alignment and synergy between regional prosperity and now adapt to Lumia. Because for us, if you think about prosperity in any region, the absolute backbone are SME businesses. And if you run a fundraising event, a charity event, it's funny, for every $100,000 that's raised, and I've seen this in reality, 90 to 92,000 will come from SME businesses and local community, 6 to 8, if you're lucky, from corporate infrastructure. One, they can't even make the decision themselves to hand the money back, or in this circular type economy, and give to a great cause. And so for me, that's always been a representation that really the traditional corporate power hierarchy is built on this idea of full value extraction, which to me is not sustainable in the long term. And so now all those traditional strengths of that approach are going to be challenged. And so there's a real opportunity, and we talk about, how the advantage of being an SME. It's a bit of a Stephen Bradbury moment, I think, as all these boundaries break down, all these feedback loops pop up, access to data, knowledge, some real creativity will really be able to come through. And ultimately, and you talk about who's the decision right holder within this network of humans, and that's the true SME advantage, isn't it? You see something today, Gabe, if you think this is essential for our way forward, theoretically you could roll that out straight after this conversation, right? Think about that
100%.
now
Yeah, the
through
decision
these
rights are in
larger.
the room.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we've underestimated the strength of that in the past because we didn't necessarily have the resources. We had the idea, but we didn't have the resources to deliver effectively. And that was our great political, that's the power challenge of an SME versus a corporatized model. But now that's flipping on its lid. And, if you're looking at building SME businesses anywhere, you've got a whole private equity deal team in your Claude login, right? So then for me, the conversation then comes back to values alignment, character, human connection, dealing decision right holder to decision right holder is a whole different world, and a whole different opportunity. Where in the past, we didn't have 10 people that could walk into the room and have a specialized, function within this big sequence. And so now, as these opportunities arise, and I think back to this whole transitioning baby boomer generation, super well documented. A lot of people are talking about it, and that's the role people like Lumia have to play, and people in different SME, basically societies. We need to, for us, help support that transition to the next generation. Otherwise, the cultural fabric of regional Australia will be challenged.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about human connection, because that's that third pillar that's important to you, and maybe you can bring it in. I want to bring the federal budget in because they advocated for intergenerational fairness, and it
Yeah.
seems like that's not really what's going to be the outcome. And you're talking about the next generation in the regions. How do we keep them there, keep them engaged, keep them innovating, keep them contributing to those communities?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's a big challenge, isn't it? And I think this is the dilemma. Yeah, I don't know. We don't want to get too political, but there is this intergenerational challenge. I think we're all seeing that. And so ultimately, for most people that sit, relatively in the center of that right versus left spectrum, you come back to this idea of ambition. I think typically the Australian culture, we've all believed in this idea of fair go. We've all believed in this idea that if you work hard and you're resilient and you have a crack, then it's okay to effectively outperform, right? And not outperform at the expense of others. And I think that's the confusion that I'm seeing. It's this idea, and I love, come back to a bit of a Billyism, but corporate capitalism and this idea of capitalism itself, well, access to capital is a real enabler. It doesn't matter what environment you're in. And so now, if we go away from this idea of allowing sustainable outperformance, then it does impact the sentiment and I guess the risk-taking nature of building a business. People do think twice, and I think you look back to all the wonderful feats of human society over how many thousand years you want to subscribe to. It's always been that reward for effort and incentive there to have a crack. Basically, that's the Australian way. Give a shit and have a crack. So I think, and come back to the optimistic lens, I'm sure as a society we'll find that calibration in time. But at the moment it's tough, but there's also this obsession with it, avoiding hard things. And I think coming in service of of this, whether it's the brand or whether it's the human connection or just trying to better yourself every day. Very simple fundamentals that I think it doesn't matter what's happening in your external environment. It's like coming back to what can I control?
Yeah, that's right. I wrote a piece a little while ago which went out on Koshi's Business Builders, I think in Yahoo Finance, and they were talking about what's happening in the current economic climate and what are the few things that SME owners can do right now. And I'm pretty sure my first point was you've got to own your situation. You've got to own the choice you made to have a business, and it's up to you the decisions from here. Nobody's coming to save you. And I say that because of your point that there's a lot of trying to avoid hard things. You can't.
Yeah.
If you want to be an SME owner, you can't avoid hard things. This is a
That's
tough ride. You find
that's
the
the life of an
optimism in the hard
entrepreneur,
things.
right? Yeah. But it's self-belief, not arrogance, right? Yeah, it's resilience, not being dogmatic, right? Like there's that balance and so self-awareness, self-reflection, having some mentors and friends, and you look to this kind of conversation, like you described it earlier as a bit of a shot in the arm. Sometimes it's just that conversation around how are you tackling this challenge, right? And for me, I didn't even really engage with the budget. I don't really care about it. To me, I've already moved on because the what the the political idiosyncrasies of the Labor government versus the Liberal government. I have absolutely no influence on that. They're not going to drive down to Colac and listen to the crap coming out of my mouth. So for me, it's about getting in, it's innovating, it's creating these feedback loops within our organisation, and it's experimenting, communicating really clearly to our team that we're all going on this journey together. This isn't something where we're going to strip the guts out of our business utilising AI, because I have no incentive to do that. Versus there will be other businesses that might do that. So I see a real opportunity to attract talent, right? And retain some really dynamic human beings that want to contribute, to the future prosperity of regional Australia.
Tell me, Kane, because I want to keep us to 30 minutes as close as possible.
Yep.
That's a commitment of ours to try and keep these episodes punchy. But
All the crap coming out of our mouths,
good
mate,
luck.
we'll be
Good
doing
luck
well.
with
Yeah.
that. You're a financial advisor, right? And for a lot of boomers, a very big part of their wealth is tied up in a business, right? And for many of those business owners that are sort of towards the end of their working life, the technology wave is very daunting, and trying to keep up with that is
Yeah.
a near
Yeah.
impossible task. But just everything
Yeah.
considered in terms of the economic climate, the budget, what you're seeing in your financial advice world, technology, what would you say to those owners of businesses that's a significant asset in their world, and they're coming to the end of their working time? They've got to make some decisions here. What should they think about?
Uh, Look, the one consistent trait to either a successful exit or transition to, for me, really comes back to communication, right? And it's like ultimately the strengths of what's got many SME business owners to where they are with what they've achieved, which by and large is usually quite incredible. But then that it becomes a bit debilitating, whether it's the inability to let go of, the control of the decision right, or even just to evolve as a business now. You think of this idea of the traditional regional farm. It was really quite a simple concept. And now you're going to an intergenerational transition of a large SME business. Very different challenge to, whacking a few fence posts in and digging the fence post by hand. So I think now it's communication, it's documenting what's the vision, purpose, values, where we're trying to go with this, how do we connect to this next generation, what's their understanding of this broader vision, how do we educate them on their own opportunities. Like, there's so much to it. But yeah, if I distilled it all down into one thing, it's like communicate a lot. Yeah.
Over communicate.
Yeah, I think because I see some real outlier, outcomes where, and Billy talks about this. Some people seem to be born with this trait of succession thinking, and the ones that are born with it are very, very clever. Right down to, I've seen over generations businesses run scholarship programs to train niche specialized pharmacists or doctors or accountants in a way that then they connect with their regional heritage and come back, And so that generational thinking has had such a positive impact on those communities. I think that's ultimately the challenge that we want to solve. It's like we can continue to do that regardless of what the federal budget says or what the political ideology is of the day. I think we can all commit to that. I guess coming out in a better space and leaving the world in a little bit better way than what we found it, right? And they're all pretty, everyone's heard of these ideas, but then to me, it's like, how do we translate that through to action? And that's the superpower.
Yeah. Magic. Let's wind it up there, Kano. Any final words?
No, mate, I think it's fun. It's good to just do something, right? And this is our first little feedback loop. So let's throw it out to the world and see where it lands.
Thanks, mate. I'm going to stop us there.